start our lapped zipper installation, we'll first mark all of our seam allowances on our fabric. So once again with this example, we're going to say we have a 5/8 seam allowance. So I'll draw a line 5/8 of an inch down from the top of each rectangle. If you need to change these numbers for your specific garment, you certainly can, but the steps for the installation should be the same. On this side, we'll also mark our 5/8 inch seam allowance in from the raw edge where our zipper is going to fall. The zipper we're using for this lapped zipper is metal and a little bulkier, the zipper head. So in order to allow for that, we're going to drop this line down 1/8 of an inch. So 1/8 of an inch into our garment from the 5/8 line, we will make another mark. This is where we're going to put the top of our zipper. This way, if it eats up some fabric, it still ends up where we want it with our original 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Unzip the zipper so that you can easily see where the metal zipper stop is and slide it all the way up so it's just at that 6/8 of an inch mark. And then mark the bottom of your zipper just underneath the metal zipper stop. This is where our zipper is going to end. A lapped zipper is similar to a centered zipper in that we're going to sew the seam first, put the zipper in from behind, and then reveal the zipper at the end. So let's pin these fabrics together as if we were going to sew them. We'll pin them right sides together. We'll place a pin at the top, bottom, and center. Our zipper is going to fall in this area from our 6/8 of an inch down mark to where we marked the bottom of our zipper. Since our zipper is going to be here and we're eventually going to reveal it at the end of this whole process, we'll baste these stitches so they're easier to take out. When we get to this mark, we'll switch to our normal 2.5 length stitch, back tack to lock these stitches in place, and then continue to sew the rest of the seam just as we typically would, back tacking at the end. We'll be basting from the top of our piece down to the mark that we placed at the bottom of our zipper. So let's turn our stitch length all the way up to a 4 or a 5, whatever machine setting your sewing machine recommends. We'll drop our needle down, and because we're going to be taking these stitches out, there's no back tack necessary at the start. We'll take big basting stitches all the way to the mark we made for the bottom of our zipper. If you want to hand walk your machine forward so you can land exactly on the bottom of your zipper mark, you can now switch to a typical stitch length, which is between a 2 and a 3. Take a few stitches forward and backward to lock these in place, and then sew the rest of the way to the bottom of the piece. When you get to the bottom, put some back tacking to lock these in place. You can clip your threads and press your seam open to get ready for the actual zipper installation. If you haven't done so yet, take the chance here to press your seam allowance open so your whole piece lays nice and flat. You also want to transfer any markings over that might not be visible. So here's my 5/8 of an inch mark that was my original seam allowance, and here is a mark 1/8 inch of an inch down from there, and here is the mark for the bottom of my zipper. We're only going to be sewing this through our seam allowance on the left side of this piece first. So just to be sure that we don't accidentally sew through to our garment, flip it around so only the seam allowance is to the left side of the seam. We'll take our zipper and put it in place moving it up so that the metal zipper stop is just at that 6/8 of an inch mark. It is face down. The wrong side of our zipper should be facing us because we're working on the back side of our garment, and we'll pin this in place. You want to make sure that the zipper teeth are pressed right up against the basted seam that you just put in by your sewing machine. So if your teeth are kind of wiggling off to the side, you want to take a minute to press them up close. Down at the bottom where the zipper head is, it's sometimes tricky to get them all the way against the seam, so take a minute to just zip it up and scoot it out of the way, and then you can more accurately get it pressed right up against your basted seam. It's sometimes difficult to sew these by machine with the pins in there. They tend to wiggle a little bit more on you. So you can always take some thread and a needle and just quickly hand baste this top to bottom. And then it should stay in place a little better for you as you machine sew it. And it will also be quicker because you don't have to stop and start so often to take your pins out. And the whole time, I'm just checking again to make sure that my teeth are right up against that basted seam. Once I have the whole thing basted in place, I am ready to take it to my sewing machine and actually machine sew the left side of the zipper in place. Since we're now sewing our zipper to our fabric, we'll switch to our traditional zipper foot. Place the zipper on your machine with the zipper to the right and your sewing needle all the way to the left. Again, with just our seam allowance, sewing underneath our presser foot, sewing through just the seam allowance, we don't want to sew through our actual garment. We will start at the bottom of our zipper, take a few back tacking stitches to lock these in place. If you're nervous about sewing by machine past a metal zipper stop, you can always walk these first few stitches until you're clear of it. And then you're going to sew until you're up to the zipper head. Don't try to sew past it. We have a trick for getting around that with still nice straight stitches. So I'll get as close as I can. And then I'll wheel until my needle is down into my fabric, presser foot up, and I will stop to unzip the zipper and scoot it back behind my presser foot so that now when I sew, I can continue in a perfectly straight line to the top of my zipper. So I'm going to keep going. And then just as before, if you'd like, you can walk past the metal zipper stop so it doesn't hit your needle, and then back tack the top of your zipper in place. Needle up, pull your fabric out and clip your threads. And at this point, it's safe to just take out your hand basting stitches. You want to leave your machine basting stitches in until the end of the entire zipper installation. Once we have the zipper sewn to the seam allowance, you now want to flip it over so the right side of your zipper is up and facing you, and we're going to top stitch very close to this folded edge. Why don't we zip it a little bit so we have plenty of space here to start sewing. And you can see right away that at this point, my zipper foot is sewing on top of my zipper teeth, which is not the best practice. You're not going to get nice, smooth, straight stitches. So if this is the direction you like to sew, just take a minute to pop your presser foot off and switch it to the other side. And now you can see when I go to put these top stitches on, the presser foot is not on top of my zipper teeth, and I'll get a lot nicer stitches. So I'm going to put a couple back tack stitches as always at the bottom. And I'm going to put some top stitches all the way along this fold, like a 1/16 of an inch away, really, really close. I'll use the edge of my zipper foot almost as a guide. And just like always, I don't want to try to squeeze past the zipper head. I'll put my needle down into my fabric and my presser foot up, and I'll take a minute to unzip the zipper past my presser foot and back far enough so that when I put my presser foot down, everything is nice and flat and I can continue sewing towards the top of my zipper. Back tack these stitches in place at the very top. Needle up, pull your fabric out, clip your threads, and now you have top stitching along the side of your zipper. We can now zip our zipper and flip our fabric over so we see the top, the outside of our garment. And traditionally there will be top stitching going along the other side of our zipper and across the bottom. The only problem with doing that from this side of our garment is that we are unable to move that zipper pull that's making this lump of fabric up here. And so that is going to mess up our top stitching and it won't be nice and straight top to bottom. In order to compensate for that, we'll sew from this side. And we're just going to put some basting in so that these pieces don't wiggle around underneath our zipper tape and we don't see that happening when we machine sew. So first I'll throw some pins in here and I'm going to use my hands to make sure that the fabric underneath is nice and flat from top to bottom. And then I'll take a hand needle and some thread and I'm going to just baste this zipper in place bottom to top, just like the pins are placed, going in that same direction. The whole time my left hand is making sure that everything is nice and flat underneath. And now we're ready to top stitch the rest of our zipper in place. I've unzipped my zipper some so that I have plenty of room to get started stitching nice and straight before I have to worry about moving the zipper head. I'm going to sew this through all the layers of my garment, the zipper tape, the seam allowance underneath, and the outside of my piece. Traditionally, your zipper stitches would be very close to your zipper teeth. We want to actually move these out about 1/4 of an inch. This way we have enough of an overlap on the front of our garment, but we still want to be close enough to the teeth that we are catching both the zipper tape and the edge of the seam allowance underneath. If at first you drop your presser foot down and you see that your zipper, the edge of the zipper foot is on top of your teeth, just take a second to switch it to the other side again. We want the point of the presser foot to be to the right and our needle to be to the left. We'll take some back tacking stitches at the top. And we'll continue down until we're about 1 inch from the zipper head. Again, you don't have to be quite as close as you typically sew to the zipper teeth. When we're close to the zipper head, needle down, presser foot up. The needle down will anchor our fabric in place so we can give it a twist if we need to pull the zipper head out of the way. Drop your presser foot back down. Make sure you're nice and straight and continue towards the bottom of your zipper. When you get just past the zipper stop, you're going to make a turn and go across the bottom of your zipper. So if you're more comfortable, you can walk your machine there so you guarantee that you're just past as close as you can to the bottom of the zipper. Needle down, presser foot up, 90-degree turn. You're going to walk across the bottom of the zipper until you reach the bottom of your first row of stitches when you put your zipper on the other side of your seam allowance. You can do some back tacking here to lock these in place. Just be careful you don't hit the metal zipper stop with your needle. Press your foot up and clip your threads. At this point, you can pull out your hand basting stitches. give it a little clip if it's been sewn into your stitches accidentally. And now your zipper is attached on both sides. Now we use our seam ripper to open up the basting stitches that we did at the very beginning of the construction. It's always safest to seam rip away from your body, so let's give our sample a twist. We can put our seam ripper in at the top of the zipper and push towards the bottom, carefully taking out all of the basting stitches that we put in the beginning, but not ripping our fabric or those top stitching stitches that you did along the very inside of the zipper. When you get to the bottom, be careful. You don't want to go through all your back tacking. Slow down a little bit. And then you can take a second to pull out any threads that are still hanging around. If you can't pull them out by hand, some of them may have gotten sewn over throughout this process or kind of tangled up inside some machine stitches throughout the process. So you can always just grab your little scissors and pull them up and clip them that way. And now you have a lapped zipper, top stitching along the side to keep it nice and neat. And when it's zipped up, the lap completely covers the zipper.